Joan Lunden is the longest-running TV host of early morning television. She greeted millions of Americans in ABC's Good Morning America for almost 2 decades. She has reported from 26 countries, covered 4 presidents, 5 Olympics, 3 royal weddings, the last one too. And she happens to also have 7 children, and she's a best-selling author, a motivational speaker, and does many television shows, so many I can't count. And she's also here with us. Thank you so much for joining us,
It's
Joan.
great to be here with you.
It's great. You have interviewed so many wonderful people, some celebrities, some presidents, and just regular folks. If you can remember some of the important life lessons you learned from some of those interviews and share them with us.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's really not the celebrity interviews that you remember. It's the interviews. I remember one time I interviewed a guy who had written a book about dealing with change in life. And he talked about whenever someone in life goes through any kind of a trauma, whether it's a divorce, a loss of someone, whatever it is, that it really takes 4 or 5 years to get yourself back kind of on path. I knew I was about to leave my husband at the time, and I thought, 4 or 5 years? Are you kidding me? And I got to tell you something, he was absolutely right. You know, because you tend to, in the beginning, I threw myself into my kids and my work, and you really, I mean, so it's. I think change in life is the one thing that seems to catch us all by surprise. Yeah. When in reality, it's really the only one thing we can count on. But we don't think about it in those terms. We don't think about how our life is just going to go through these like almost monumental changes as our kids grow up and they leave, and then who are we? And if people can address life and kind of walk through life anticipating that kind of change, and maybe we'd be more prepared for it. But those are the things that impact me. I remember interviewing Jonathan Kabat-Zinn. Now, he wrote a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And what the basis of the book is that you and I can go anywhere, but when we look at it through our 2 different sets of eyes, we will see it in a different way, because
different experience.
You have your pair of glasses on with all the baggage that comes along with that, and I have mine. And that really, like those moments where I hear someone say something that literally stays with me forever, that says, you know, I can change the way I walk through life by just changing my attitude. And I can look at things in a more positive way, and I can choose not to react to everything that everyone says. To me, those kind of amazing, impactful life lessons, that's what I remember.
Is there a person that you consider one of the wisest people you've ever interviewed?
Probably Deepak Chopra. I mean, he's the guy who, I mean, reading his books, and it's so funny because he's sold so many books, and yet not that many people have all read his books because they're long and sometimes arduous to get through, but they're just filled with such insight. And, you know, he's the guy who says that we are the only creatures on the world that can literally change our life by changing our attitude.
Absolutely.
And that, you know, that health is not just the absence of disease. You know, that we really are in charge of our longevity and our destiny. And, you know, I remember I went to him once, I was writing a book at the time, and I said, could I give like a little summation of your book? I forget what's one of his first ones, Your Body, Your Mind. So,
Mind, Body, Soul. Yeah, he's written so many.
He said, okay. And so I was so nervous to do it. I mean, here's this fantastic, you know, guy who, and I wrote these 4 pages and I sent them off to him. And I said, well, I need your approval before I put this into my book. And he literally called me up and said, I don't know whether I should be happy or not that you were able to just summarize in 4 pages my entire book, but you did a really good job of it. You got my approval.
Oh, good.
But to me, the thing that's impacted my life the most are words.
Okay.
Words, you know, whether it's a saying, a positive quote, reading someone's book. To me, those are the things that kind of change and mold me and make me a little bit of a different person as I walk forward.
Now, we're talking also about your career. You were a pioneer, and at the time that you started out, it was really tough for women in television. So thank you for what you've done for us. But tell me some of the obstacles that you ran into and how you dealt with it.
You know, I don't think I thought of myself as a pioneer at all. I thought of Barbara Walters as the pioneer. to me, I was just a young girl kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And but I'll say this, a friend in passing, I thought it was going to be a doctor when I grew up because my dad was a doctor. Never had a thought of going into television. A friend of the family said in passing, you know, they're going to have to put a lot more women on television because the FCC is now putting pressure on, and you'd probably be good at that. And I could have said, oh, thanks, and gone home and never thought about it again. But I went home and I picked up the phone and I called the news director of the NBC station in Sacramento, California, where I live, asked for an interview, went in with my little questions, like what's the future of broadcasting, how do you think women are going to be in the picture, and after about 6 minutes, he said, well, obviously you know how to do an interview. And he took me down into the studio and auditioned me, and I got an internship out of it. In fact, he really said, I think you have promise, but we don't have any jobs.
Right.
And so I said, okay, thank you. And I was walking out of the building, and the weatherman, the weatherman had been back behind the set getting his maps ready for the day. He followed me to the door, and he said, there are some stations around the country putting weather girls on, and I'd like to train you to be the first weather girl in Sacramento. And I paused for a moment because, to be perfectly candid, I thought, I hate science.
Meteorology.
I mean, meteorology? That sounds like the most boring thing in the world. But thank God I heard that the door opened.
Right.
And I knew that was a way to go through the door. So I said yes. And I, 6 months later, I was on the air doing radio weather reports. And, 6 months earlier, I didn't know a cirrus cloud from a cumulus cloud. I knew nothing. But I just jumped in and learned and soaked up everything. And that's what I always tell young people to do, Don't limit your possibilities by what you think you might be able to do, but just go for it and use your talents. Find your talents.
Right.
And even if you go into a field and then you find out you don't like it, I just think young people today can't just be expecting everything to come their way. That's the journey. It's the journey.
Barbara Walters, though, gave you some advice. Because when you first started, they weren't giving you the best interviews. They were giving you the light, you can do certain things, you're limited, no hard news.
The woman stories I got.
Exactly, the female stories. And yet, Barbara Walters told you something, and you followed her lead.
I was so nervous to interview her the first time. She was my mentor. She was the only one on television, really, as I was going into the business. And she said, don't fight City Hall here. Don't go and insist that you get the big interviews because you're not going to. They're not ready to do it. But my advice to you is to take every little piece that they'll give you and make it shine. You make every one of those pieces shine, and you'll endure here and you'll rise to the top. And when you finally find your place and they respect you for what you can do, then go out and get your own interviews. And I totally followed her advice, and she was right. And something else that's kind of interesting? All those stories that I was relegated to, the woman stories, health, education, raising
lifestyle.
Families, parenting, lifestyle, medicine. I loved those stories.
Right.
I loved what I was doing. I mean, I had activists, write me and say, we've fought hard for women's roles, and you're taking all those little stories. And I would write them back and say, I loved my job. And I did like those stories. And after I left Good Morning America, if you look at all the programming that I've done, all the health shows, I do media campaigns for every hospital and major health organization in this country, American Heart, American Cancer Society, American Academy of Pediatrics. And those stories that I was supposedly relegated to, they really helped mold and shape my career. I found what I loved. I found what I had a passion for. I found where I could make my little mark on the world, where maybe I could impact other people. And that was the journey I was set on. And I loved my journey.
And that's what made you successful.
Yeah.
What you're still doing today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about success, because you give a lot of great speeches, motivational speeches, and you share some of the aspects of success, especially for women.
It's so funny because men are just raised to be leaders, to be the head of the team. And women have to sometimes struggle a little bit more. It's changing now, but women, even if parents don't mean to, I think they raise women a little bit different. So sometimes we have to struggle a little bit to value ourselves and to have that kind of confidence when we walk into a room. So I just try to always encourage women to recognize their strengths that they can bring to something. And then as they go along, you have to value yourself. I mean, I'll say along the way, they might have given me the $100 raise, and I gave the guy the $1,000 raise, and I said, "Oh, thank you so much." And it's just the way we are. It's the way we're wired. And so I think women are overcoming a lot of that these days. I think women's biggest challenge today with building success is balancing their lives. And we've come a long way, baby, and isn't that a fantastic thing? But at the same time, from the 1960s, 70s, when the women's lib movement got going, because we've come so far and because we have so many opportunities and because over half the people in the workforce are women, it's a unique challenge for women today to still be able to figure out how to be the parent that they want to be, how to be the happy-go-lucky wife that they want to be and not be all stressed out all the time. It's a very challenging role that women lead today.
And you shared that when you left Good Morning America, you had to deal with the identity crisis.
Sure.
Because you identified with your role. Men do this all the time. But
all
we
the
don't
time.
tend to do it as much because we have so many different roles. But for you, you had to deal with that major change. How did you do that?
I'll tell you the main difference between men and women. When men leave a job and then you see them a year later, what you will say to them is, "Oh, so where are you working now?" When we leave a job, everywhere I go, they say, "Are you enjoying retirement? Are you enjoying being at home with the kids?" It's a different kind of assumption. My husband always just says, "Just say yes. Just tell them you're enjoying retirement." I mean, I work on so many different projects, and I'm fortunate that they all come to me that, after being out there for 20 years on Good Morning America, and that I can pick and choose and do things where I think I can make an impact. It's a very big change in your identity, and it's people face this, though, all the time in their lives as their children grow up and go away, and then what are you going to do with your life? And who are you, and what are your strengths, and how? To me, the person who is the most successful in life is the one who can continually reinvent themselves and believe that they can write a new chapter that might not be the same as the last chapter, but it can still be great and interesting and challenging and fun and just different.
Let's talk about fitness, because you shared with us also that you had gained a lot of weight and you decided, "I'm going to release 50 pounds. And you did it, and you had a plan, and you wrote a whole book about this healthy living. So share with us what you learned about weight loss, which is everybody's big challenge, and fitness.
Yeah, everybody always used to ask me, "How'd you lose all the weight?" Because they wanted to hear that little magic bullet.
Can I take a pill?
Yeah, can I take some little pill and it'll all go away? And of course what it was working with some nutritionists and really educating myself, getting involved with trainers and learning how to work out, and then also embracing the idea that I needed to put some play back into my life. If you just do it to just lose weight or be a smaller size, you'll do it for a while, but you won't stick with it. But if you can somehow bring the people in your life, whether they're your girlfriends, your co-workers, other moms that have kids in school with you, or fantastic if you can get your husband involved. It's great to put a little challenge back into a marriage. It is. It's wonderful. It takes you back to when you first got to know each other and you played together. But women lose that sense of play. Men are much better at this. They still go out and golf. They might get a bunch of guys together and do a pickup game of basketball. And we tend to check out.
Right.
And we shouldn't, because if you can get together with some women in your area and put together a little group that plays tennis together, that hikes together, that goes on a walk together, whatever it is that you like, or go to some kind of an exercise program or gym together, when you do it as a group, women tend to be more successful. They'll stay in it. We can guilt each other.
Right.
But it helps to have somebody call up and say, "No, come on, I'm going. Aren't you going today?" But the payoff, of course, is a healthier life and a longer life.
Right.
I know I added years to my life.
Absolutely. Now, we know that it's 30% of your weight is about exercise and 70% is your diet.
Yeah.
Share with us what's your regular diet. You travel so much, and it must be so challenging for you.
The best thing that ever happened to me is when I started on my program, my nutritionist made me keep a food journal. And that is in my safety deposit box under lock and key. But it's unreal to start, and over the course of the first, few weeks to a month, it becomes very evident where your weaknesses are and where you're going wrong. And I think that you really have to, everybody doesn't have to go hire a nutritionist. You can pick up, there are great books out there, and educate yourself. And because what happens is that we've always got this list of the things we'd really like to have, the French fries, the pizza, the potato chips, the tortilla chips, whatever they are. And then you're hard-pressed to think about what it is you should be eating. So if you educate yourself and you make yourself that list, then you're choosing from that list. And that, I think, is a very important component, because fitness is important, but you can go out and you can run for an hour every day. But if you're eating terrible, it's not going to happen for you. You have to figure out what you should be eating. And unfortunately, most women resolve this by stopping eating, which is the worst thing you could do. So, I say educate yourself, and I did it, and I was turning 40 years old, and I just decided one day that I wanted to be in charge of my health and in charge of my life and in charge of my longevity.
Right.
And I literally took it on, I'm telling you, in such a serious fashion. It was as important as any job or any interview I had to do. And I completely changed my life, and and you know what? All my kids and my husband and everybody in my family benefited from it, because
Absolutely.
I changed the way I shopped. I changed the way
you feel about yourself.
Yeah, not to mention they had a much nicer person to live with.
Exactly.
I'm way nicer and happier and more fun when I'm feeling fit and in charge of my life. When you run around and you're scared to death about what's going on in your body, and you think that there might be something wrong, but you're not willing to take your clothes off and go to the doctor and get on the scale, and you're running scared like that, it affects your entire demeanor.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, I always tell people, you don't have to join a gym. You just have to move. Start moving.
Yeah.
Let's talk about aging and parenting. You had 3 children, biological children, and then you chose to have, I guess, two sets of twins with a surrogate mother. And you did it later in life.
Yeah.
So how do you balance aging gracefully and being a good parent to so many children of different ages?
It's interesting. Well, back in the old days, people had families that ranged from the newborn to 20 years old, and it was not uncommon.
No big deal.
It was no big deal. But then we kind of got into this idea that you have, your 2 or 3 kids, and that's it. But life, has different chapters, and I divorced, and I met someone, and quite honestly, I will tell you, I wasn't really looking for someone that just wanted to go off into the sunset and play golf and retire with me. I was looking for someone who was a family person and who would embrace my 3 daughters, who were all, young at the time. And I actually I didn't like the idea of them all leaving and no little sound of the feet coming down the hall in the morning to the bedroom. Right. So I was looking for that way of life, and I found a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I remember I had a bunch of my friends coming over to my house for a party when the second set of twins were born. And surrogacy was a wonderful, wonderful option for us. And all my high-powered girlfriends came in the front door, and they looked at these newborn babies, and they looked at my little toddlers running around like little maniacs, and they said, "Oh, my God, I'm just tired just looking at this. It makes me exhausted." And, my caterers, who were all French women, had come in the door 2 hours earlier. They looked at the babies, and they said, "Oh, you will never grow old." And I thought, isn't that interesting? 2 sets of eyes looking at exactly the same thing. One saw it as exhilarating, and the other saw it as exhausting. I look at it as exhilarating. Right. And when my friends call and say, "Oh, how you doing?" I said, "I don't know. I'm at the park at the top of the slide. Where are you?" You know, I have a young, active life. I'm out on the baseball field every Saturday morning.
Oh, wow.
And it's great.
And do you have any great tips on raising teens? Because that's such a challenge.
Yeah, you will get through it. There is the other side. And they actually like you on the other side, amazingly. Exactly, and you actually aren't dumb. Yeah. Teenagers are challenging. And, you know, even I now have 20-somethings, and, you know, I'm still very, very involved in their life. And I think that it's interesting that my older girls, they've gained something to me that's so valuable by being around my little ones and being around them when they were babies. Not that they've learned to change a diaper or anything like that, but they come in the house and they drop their satchels with their laptops and their iPads and their Blackberries, and they look at these little kids and they say, "Hi, I'm here. What do you want to do? Do you want to read? Can I read you a book?" It's given them an amazing capacity, I think, to drop the me part of them and just give themselves to these little kids. And I think it's probably shaped them in a way and changed their character and made them different people as adults.
Right.
And I think that's been a blessing to them.
Now, you completely changed your life. You probably had a couple of years. I read your book about this. When you left Good Morning America and you went through a divorce and you had to face those major changes, and look who you are now. But my question is about divorce, because a lot of people, 60% of Americans go through it one time or another. And you said Michael Bolton helped you deal with it. There's some tips that you learned that I would like for you to share with us.
Well, Michael Bolton had just gone through his own divorce right as I started mine, and I'd interviewed him a couple of times. And, you know, you have sometimes folks like that in your life that will call you and just say, you know, I'm here if you just want to rant, rave, talk, cry, whatever it is. And interestingly, a few years later, when he started his charity, Michael Bolton Charities, which gives help to women and children at risk. And that's usually women who are being abused or trying to get out of some kind of a situation. And he came to me and said, I want to do this, and would you help me? So I've been hosting the Michael Bolton Charities for the last 18 years. And that was my give back to Michael for being there for me in a time of need. It's a difficult thing for any couple to go through. And if you can somehow not let it take on a life of its own, for me it was very difficult because the press fed into it. But, you know, life does go on. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I could say, is that when you're facing it, and people stay in bad relationships because they'd almost rather be in the bad relationship rather than go through
the change.
Yes. And it's not good for your kids if it's bad. And life does go on, and we all have a way of finding our interpersonal strength. And your future is kind of in your hand. You're holding that pen.
You're the creator.
You know, you can write what's on that next page. But people feel very disabled at that moment, emotionally disabled. And I have got women coming through book signing lines all the time, and I see the tears in their eyes, and I'm just there to say that, trust me, life will go on, and you will find happiness again in whatever form it is, and you'll find your own personal strength.
And the thing change for you is a theme that's throughout your books as well. You lost your father when you were 12 years old. That was the biggest change, I'm assuming, for you. How did that impact your life?
That's interesting, because it probably was the biggest change, because at that point in my life, I think I was 13, just turning 14, and it probably made me the person I am today, because I saw my mom have to become all of a sudden a single working mom. She hadn't worked. She'd been a stay-at-home mom. She went back to work, and I saw her strength in raising my brother and myself. It also made me probably very independent and self-reliant, because I all of a sudden, you know, your whole sense of security is just rattled at its very core. So I think that the impact that had on me at that kind of an age, 13 years old, probably, gave me the kind of fortitude and that I used later in life, that I challenged my mom with as a teenager.
There you go.
And then the same kind of tenacity then forges steel when you get into your 20s.
How do you know you're living smart?
I know I'm living smart because I am in charge of my own health and in charge of my own happiness. And I do everything I can to keep my body fit and to make sure that I take breaks and recharge. And then, to me, one of the most important things is that now that I understand the importance of that, to then pass that message along to other women.
Thank you so much for sharing all those messages. Thank you so much for being with us on this Living Smart special. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.